CEO was criticized for marrying a black woman, unaware that she actually is more than he could ever imagine. What starts as a staged reality show to prove the world wrong turns into something far more dangerous when the truth comes out. She's not just playing the role of his wife, she's using this marriage to tear down the very system that once held her back. As their fake romance turns into a real battle for love and power, secrets unfold, revealing that she's been playing a game he never knew he was in. But what happens when the line between truth and deception blurs? Will their marriage survive the lies they've built it on? Or will it all come crashing down? Can he handle the truth? Or will it destroy everything he's worked for? Is their love strong enough to break through the chains of society's expectations? Or will the weight of their secrets tear them apart forever? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Under the harsh studio lights, Lena Williams took a deep breath, her heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. The makeup artist had done an amazing job hiding the slight tremor in her hands, but nothing could mask the nervous energy coursing through her body. At 28 years old, she'd built her entire career on being confident and outspoken on social media. But this was different. This was real television, with real stakes. And now, let's welcome our newest addition to Perfect Match, CEO Edition, social media sensation Lena Williams. The host's voice boomed through the studio, and Lena stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The audience's reaction was immediate and mixed. Some clapped enthusiastically, while others whispered among themselves, their eyes critical and questioning. Lena held her head high, remembering why she'd agreed to this crazy experiment in the first place. This wasn't just about ratings or fame, it was about challenging perceptions and breaking down barriers. "Thank you for having me," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. The cream-colored dress she wore felt like armor, carefully chosen to project both sophistication and approachability. The host, a middle-aged woman with perfectly coiffed hair, turned to the audience. "As you all know, our show pairs successful CEOs with potential life partners, but this season we're doing something different. Lena and her match will live together for 6 months, documenting their journey as they navigate their new marriage." Across the city, in a sleek downtown office, Zane Davenport watched the live broadcast on his tablet, his expression unreadable. At 42, he'd built his tech empire from the ground up, earning both respect and scrutiny along the way. The show's producers had pursued him relentlessly, promising this would humanize his image and boost his company's public profile. "You're really going through with this?" Ryan Jacobs, his best friend and financial advisor, leaned against Zane's desk. Zane adjusted his perfectly knotted tie. "It's a business decision, Ryan. 6 months of playing house and our stock prices will soar. The board's already approved it. And the fact that they paired you with someone like Lena Williams doesn't concern you." Zane's jaw tightened. "You mean someone black?" "I mean someone who's made a career out of being controversial on social media." Ryan clarified quickly. "Have you seen some of her posts about corporate America?" Back in the studio, Lena was handling the host's probing questions with grace. "Yes, I'm aware that some people might question this pairing. But isn't that exactly why we need to have these conversations? Love doesn't see color or tax brackets." The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "And what about your son?" the host asked, causing Lena's heart to skip a beat. "How does 6-year-old Troy feel about this arrangement?" Lena's smile remained steady, though her hands clasped tighter in her lap. "Troy knows this is for a show, but he's excited about the adventure. Children have a wonderful way of seeing past the things that adults often get hung up on." Meanwhile, Zane stood in front of his office window, looking out at the city skyline. His phone buzzed with messages from family members who'd just watched Lena's segment. Their responses ranged from concerned to outright disapproving. "Your mother's already called twice," Ryan mentioned, checking his own phone. "Of course she has," Zane muttered. The Davenport family had certain expectations, certain images to maintain. This show would challenge all of them. The producers had arranged for Zane and Lena's first meeting to be filmed that evening at an upscale restaurant. As Lena sat in the back of the production van, reviewing her talking points, she couldn't help but feel like she was preparing for battle rather than a first date. "Remember," the producer said, adjusting her microphone, "we want authentic reactions, but keep it civil. The audience needs to believe this could work." Lena nodded, though inside she was questioning everything. Her social media followers had been divided when she announced her participation in the show. Some praised her bravery, while others accused her of selling out. When Zane's car pulled up to the restaurant, a small crowd had already gathered, phones raised to capture the moment. He stepped out, cutting an impressive figure in his tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair adding to his distinguished appearance. The cameras rolled as Lena walked toward the restaurant entrance. Their eyes met for the first time, and for a moment everything else faded away. Zane was taller than she'd expected, his presence commanding yet not intimidating. His eyes, a warm brown, showed a hint of nervousness that matched her own. "Ms. Williams," he said, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Lena took his hand, noting his firm but gentle grip. "Mr. Davenport, I hope you're ready for an interesting 6 months." They were seated at a private table, though the restaurant buzzed with energy from other diners trying to sneak pictures. The cameras positioned around them seemed to fade into the background as they began to talk. "I've read some of your social media posts," Zane said, studying her over his water glass. "You don't pull any punches?" Lena smiled, a genuine one this time. "And I've read about your company's diversity initiatives, or should I say, lack thereof." A flash of something, respect perhaps, crossed Zane's face. "Touché. I suppose we both have our preconceptions to overcome." As their conversation continued, both became aware of the weight of what they were undertaking. This wasn't just about ratings or personal gain anymore. They were about to become the faces of a social experiment that would challenge not only their own prejudices, but those of everyone watching. "Why did you really agree to this?" Lena asked during a quiet moment between courses. Zane considered her question carefully. "Honestly, at first it was about business. But now, sitting here..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think maybe it's about something more important." The cameras captured their interaction, but what they couldn't capture was the underlying current of tension and curiosity flowing between them. Both Lena and Zane were used to being in control of their narratives, but this situation was unprecedented for both of them. As the evening drew to a close, they stood outside the restaurant, aware of the cameras but feeling strangely isolated in their shared experience. "Tomorrow then?" Zane asked, referring to the scheduled move-in day. "Tomorrow," Lena confirmed. "Troy and I will be there at 10 o'clock. For a moment, they stood there, two people from different worlds, about to embark on a journey that would expose them to public scrutiny, judgment, and perhaps something neither of them expected to find. The cameras caught their goodbye, a polite handshake that lingered a moment too long. As they went their separate ways, both felt the weight of what they'd signed up for. This wasn't just television anymore, it was real life, with real consequences, and neither of them could predict where it would lead. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the expansive windows of the modern mansion as Zane Davenport pulled his sleek black Mercedes into the circular driveway. The production crew's vehicles already lined the street, their equipment scattered across the manicured lawn like technical breadcrumbs leading to what would be his home for the next 6 months. He sat in his car for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel, watching the bustle of activity through his tinted windows. Camera operators adjusted their equipment while sound technicians tested. Microphones. This was it, the beginning of what could either be the biggest mistake or the most transformative experience of his life. Taking a deep breath, Zane stepped out of his car. The cameras immediately swiveled toward him, their mechanical eyes tracking his every move. He straightened his navy blazer, a habit born from years of board meetings and press conferences, though this felt entirely different from any business dealing he'd ever handled. The front door stood open, inviting yet somehow intimidating. As he approached, he could see Lena Williams standing in the foyer. Her arms were crossed over her chest, a defensive posture that spoke volumes about her own discomfort with the situation. Despite this, she held her head high, her dark eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him pause mid-step. "Welcome home," Lena said, her voice carrying a hint of irony that wasn't lost on either of them. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for their interaction. Zane nodded, managing a polite smile. "Thank you. I hope I'm not late." He was exactly on time, of course. Being punctual was deeply ingrained in his nature. "Right on schedule," Lena replied, uncrossing her arms but maintaining her position at the center of the foyer. She wore a simple but elegant green dress that complemented her skin tone, clearly chosen with the cameras in mind. "The crew's been here since 7 this morning, setting up their equipment." A producer stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "Great. We've got your first meeting on camera. Now, Zane, if you could just bring in your bags, we want to capture the moment you officially move in." Zane resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Instead, he turned and walked back to his car, aware of the cameras following his every move. He retrieved his expensive leather suitcase and briefcase, props in what felt increasingly like an elaborate theater production. As he re-entered the house, Lena had moved to stand near the sweeping staircase. The foyer's high ceilings and marble floors created an echo that made every footstep sound dramatic. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," Lena informed him, her tone professional, as if she were a real estate agent showing a property rather than his supposed new wife. "I've taken the master bedroom at the end of the hall." "That's fine," Zane replied, noting how they both seemed to be choosing their words carefully, conscious of the microphones picking up every syllable. "I assume the crew has already set up cameras throughout the house?" "Oh, yes," Lena said, a slight edge to her voice. "Every room except the bathrooms. Privacy is apparently a luxury we'll have to ration carefully." Their eyes met, and for a moment there was a flash of understanding between them. Both were used to being in the public eye, but this was different. This was voluntary surveillance, a willing surrender of their personal space for their own separate agendas. The producer interrupted their moment. Lena, could you show Zane around the house? We want to capture your first tour together." Lena nodded, switching on what Zane recognized as her social media personality, more animated, with a carefully crafted warmth. "Of course. Shall we start with the living room?" They moved through the house, their footsteps echoing off hardwood floors and their voices bouncing off high ceilings. Lena pointed out various features: the state-of-the-art kitchen with its gleaming appliances, the formal dining room that seemed too large for just 2 people, the home office they would presumably share. "And this is the family room," Lena said, gesturing to a well-appointed space with comfortable-looking furniture and a large television. "I thought this might be more comfortable for everyday use." Zane noticed subtle touches throughout the room: family photos on the walls, a few children's toys tucked neatly in a corner, a colorful throw blanket draped over the couch. This was clearly where Lena and her son had already begun to make their mark. "It's very nice," he said, meaning it. Despite the artificial nature of their arrangement, he could appreciate the effort to make the space feel like a real home. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, both aware of the cameras capturing their discomfort. Zane found himself studying Lena's face, noting the slight tension in her jaw, the way her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress when she thought the cameras weren't focusing on her. "I know this is unusual," Lena said finally, her voice lower, though still audible to the microphones. "But I hope we can make this work, for both our sakes." Zane nodded, understanding the layers in her statement. They each had their reasons for agreeing to this arrangement: his need to soften his public image and her desire for greater opportunities for her son. "I'm sure we can maintain a professional approach to this situation." A flicker of something, amusement, perhaps, crossed Lena's face. "Professional, yes, that's one way to describe fake marriage." Before Zane could respond, one of the producers called out, "Could we get that last bit again? But maybe with a bit more warmth?" Lena's mask of confidence slipped for just a second, revealing a flash of frustration before she composed herself again. Zane felt a sudden surge of sympathy. This constant performance, this need to manufacture emotions for the camera, was already wearing thin, and it was only day one. "Actually," Zane spoke up, surprising himself, "I think we could all use a break. It's been a long morning." The producer looked ready to object, but something in Zane's expression, perhaps the same authority he used in corporate boardrooms, made him reconsider. "All right, 15 minutes, everyone." As the crew dispersed, Lena shot Zane a grateful look. They stood in silence for a moment, both aware that while the cameras might have stopped rolling, they were still being watched, still performing their roles. "Thank you," Lena said quietly, dropping onto one of the plush sofas. "I forgot how exhausting it is, being on all the time." Zane remained standing, his hands in his pockets, maintaining a respectful distance. "I understand. In business, we call it managing optics. This is something else entirely." "Something else indeed." Lena agreed, and for the first time since he'd arrived, her smile seemed genuine, if tired. 6 months of managing optics 24/7. "What have we gotten ourselves into, Mr. Davenport?" "Please call me Zane," he said, then added with a hint of dry humor, "We are married, after all." This earned him a small laugh from Lena, and for a moment the tension in the room eased slightly. But they both knew this momentary peace was just that, momentary. Soon the cameras would roll again, and they would resume their roles in this elaborate production, each hoping their gamble would pay off in the end. The show's first episode aired on a Tuesday evening, and by Wednesday morning, social media was ablaze with reactions. Lena sat in the family room, scrolling through her phone while Zane paced near the window, his own device pinging constantly with notifications. "Well," Lena said, her voice carefully neutral, "we're certainly trending." She read aloud from her screen, "Bold and beautiful how Lena Williams showing us what real courage looks like." "That's nice." She scrolled further. "Oh, but here's a different take. Another social climber using marriage to get ahead. Disgusting." Zane paused his pacing, running a hand through his hair. "My PR team is monitoring everything. The reactions are mixed, to put it mildly." The production crew bustled around them, adjusting lights and checking sound levels for their next scene. Neither Lena nor Zane paid them much attention anymore. They'd learned to tune out the constant presence of cameras and crew members. "Your family's been quite vocal," Lena mentioned, her eyes still on her phone. "I saw your sister's interview this morning." Zane's jaw tightened. His sister Caroline had appeared on a morning show expressing her deep concern about his participation in what she called a publicity stunt marriage. The words had stung, even though he'd expected them. "The Davenports have always been private," he said, his voice tight. "This is different for them." A producer approached them, clipboard in hand. "We're ready for the dinner scene. Remember, this is where you both open up about your motivations. Keep it natural, but don't be afraid to dig deep." They moved to the dining room, where the crew had set up an elaborate meal, all real food, but carefully arranged for maximum visual appeal. Lena sat across from Zane, smoothing her navy blue dress nervously. "And action!" The cameras rolled as they began eating, maintaining what they hoped looked like comfortable silence. Finally, Zane spoke his rehearsed line. "I've been wondering what made you decide to do this show." Lena set down her fork, and when she looked up, there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been in the script. "You want the truth? Not just what makes good TV?" The producer started to step forward, but Zane held up a hand, genuinely interested. "Yes, I want the truth." "I'm tired of the whispers," Lena said, her voice strong and clear. "The sideways glances when I walk into a high-end store, the assumptions people make when they see a black woman with success, that I must have gotten it through some man or through shortcuts." She leaned forward slightly. "This show, it's a platform. Yes, it's controversial. Yes, it's unconventional. But it's also an opportunity to show people their own biases." The crew was completely silent now, the only sound the soft whir of cameras. Zane found himself leaning forward too, caught up in her passion. "When people see us together," Lena continued, "they make assumptions. They either praise it as some kind of progressive victory or condemn it as a scandal. But what they're really doing is revealing their own prejudices about interracial relationships, about success, about what marriage should look like." "And you think this show will change that?" Zane asked, genuinely curious. "I think it will start conversations," Lena replied. "I think it will make some people uncomfortable, and that's good. Change doesn't happen in comfortable spaces." The producer was beaming. This was better than anything they could have scripted. But Zane barely noticed. He was studying Lena with new eyes, seeing past the carefully crafted social media personality to something deeper, more substantial. "You're using the controversy to make a point," he said slowly. "I'm using the controversy to make a difference," she corrected. "And yes, I know some people will call me an opportunist. But if I can use this platform to speak for others who don't have a voice, to challenge the way society views relationships like ours..." She shrugged. "Then let them talk." Later that evening, after the crews had packed up and left, Zane received a call from Ryan Jacobs, his best friend and most trusted advisor. "Your family is in an uproar," Ryan said without preamble. "Your mother called me 3 times today." Zane sighed, looking out the window at the city lights. "I expected that. The thing is," Ryan continued, "I watched the dinner scene footage. It's already leaked online. Zane, this woman, she's not what we expected." "No," Zane agreed quietly. "She's not. The public is fascinated. Your company's stock actually went up today, and the conversations she wanted to start, they're happening. Social media is on fire with debates about representation, about privilege, about what makes a real marriage." Zane thought about the passion in Lena's voice, the way she'd dropped her carefully maintained facade to speak her truth. "Maybe," he said slowly, "maybe this isn't just about improving my public image anymore." "Be careful," Ryan warned. "Remember, this is still a show. The cameras are always rolling, and everything can be edited to tell whatever story they want to tell." But even as Zane acknowledged the truth in his friend's words, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted during that dinner. Lena Williams wasn't just playing a role for the cameras, she was fighting for something bigger than herself. And despite his initial skepticism, he found himself wanting to understand more. The next morning's headlines proved Ryan right about the public's fascination. Every major news outlet had picked up the story, and social media was divided into fierce camps. Those who supported Lena's mission and those who accused her of exploitation. The Davenport name was everywhere, paired with words like controversial, groundbreaking, and scandalous. Lena was in the kitchen when Zane came downstairs, already filming a segment for the show. She was explaining her social media strategy to the cameras, but her usual polished delivery was different now, more authentic, more determined. She caught his eye as he passed, and there was a moment of silent understanding between them. They were both in this now, for better or worse, and the world was watching. The production crew had finally left for the day, leaving Zane and Lena alone in the sprawling dining room. Silver moonlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. The house felt different without the constant buzz of cameras and microphones, quieter, more real. Lena sat at the far end of the mahogany dining table, pushing a piece of grilled salmon around her plate. She'd changed out of her camera-ready outfit into a simple grey sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. Without the careful staging of the show, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "You don't have to sit so far away," Zane said, breaking the silence. "The cameras are gone. We can drop the act." Lena hesitated, then picked up her plate and wine glass, moving to sit closer. "Force of habit, I guess. Everything feels like a performance these days." "I know what you mean." Zane loosened his tie, something he'd never do on camera. "Sometimes I forget what it's like to just be." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it held weight. Both of them knew they were stepping into uncharted territory, a conversation without scripts or cameras. "Can I ask you something?" Lena ventured, taking a sip of her wine. "What made someone like you agree to this show? I mean, you're Zane Davenport. You run a multi-million-dollar company. This kind of publicity stunt seems beneath you." Zane's fingers drummed against the table, a nervous habit he usually suppressed. "Would you believe me if I said I was tired of living up to the Davenport name?" "What do you mean?" "My father." Zane paused, choosing his words carefully. "He's built this empire, this legacy. And from the day I was born, my path was set. Harvard, business school, executive training, groomed to take over the company. Every decision, every move scrutinized and judged." Lena leaned forward, genuinely interested. "And you never wanted something different?" "I wanted to be an architect," Zane admitted, surprising himself with the confession. "I used to sketch buildings in my spare time, design these impossible structures. My father found my sketchbooks when I was 16. He gave a hollow laugh. He said dreams don't build empires. "That's awful," Lena said softly. "What about you?" Zane asked, deflecting attention from his vulnerability. "Your family must be proud of your success, your influence." Lena's bitter laugh caught him off guard. "My family thinks I'm selling out. My mother—" She shook her head, pushing her plate away. "She wanted me to be a teacher, like her, something stable, respectable. When I started my social media career, she told me I was making a spectacle of myself." "But you've built something impressive," Zane protested. "Your following, your platform. Try explaining that to a woman who grew up watching her own mother clean houses for white families," Lena said. "In her mind, drawing attention to yourself as a black woman is dangerous. She thinks I'm setting myself up for heartbreak, putting myself out there to be judged and criticized." "Is she wrong?" Zane asked gently. Lena's fingers traced the rim of her wine glass. "No. The criticism comes daily. every post, every appearance, there's always someone ready to tear me down. But that's exactly why I do it. Because someone has to stand in that spotlight and show others it's possible. The discrimination. Zane started, then hesitated. Go ahead, you can ask. How bad is it? Lena's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw the weight she carried. Last year, I was invited to speak at a marketing conference. When I arrived, the security guard assumed I was part of the catering staff. When I corrected him, he demanded to see my ID. 3 times. She took a deep breath. The white speakers walked right past him with a nod. Zane felt shame color his cheeks. I'm sorry. I've never had to think about it. Lena finished. That's the point. You walk into a room, and people see success, power. I walk in, and they see assumptions, stereotypes. That's why this show matters, because when people see us together, it challenges those assumptions. Is that why you agreed to do it? Partly, Lena admitted, but also because I'm tired of playing it safe. My whole life I've heard, don't rock the boat, don't draw attention. But change doesn't come from being quiet. Zane found himself nodding. I understand that. The pressure to conform, to meet expectations, it's suffocating. The golden heir to the Davenport throne feels suffocated. Lena teased, but her eyes were kind. Every day, Zane said, surprising himself with his honesty. Board meetings where I'm second-guessed because I'm not my father. Society, events where I'm paraded around like a prize stallion. The constant pressure to be perfect, unassailable. Because any mistake would reflect on the family name. Lena finished. Exactly. Zane reached for the wine bottle, refilling both their glasses. Sometimes I envy people who can fail without making headlines. Lena laughed, a genuine sound that lightened the mood. Trust me, failing publicly isn't all it's cracked up to be. My first YouTube video was a disaster. I tried to do this elaborate makeup tutorial, and halfway through, my ring light fell over and knocked everything off the table. I cried for hours. But you kept going, Zane observed. I did. Because that's what we do, right? We pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and try again. Whether it's a failed video or a billion-dollar deal. To failing forward. Zane raised his glass. To failing forward. Lena echoed, clinking her glass against his. They spent the next hour sharing stories. Zane's disastrous first board meeting, where he accidentally approved the wrong merger. Lena's embarrassing wardrobe malfunction during a live stream. With each story, the carefully constructed walls between them crumbled a little more. You know what's funny? Lena said as they cleared the dishes together, another act that would never make it to camera. I think this is the first real conversation we've had since this whole thing started. It is, Zane agreed. Maybe we should have done this sooner. Maybe, Lena said softly. But would it have been real then? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. They both knew that tomorrow the cameras would return. The performance would resume, but something had shifted between them, something authentic and unexpected. As they said goodnight, heading to their separate rooms, both felt lighter somehow. They'd seen past the facades, the carefully constructed images they presented to the world. For one evening, they'd just been Zane and Lena, two people carrying their own burdens, fighting their own battles, and finding unexpected understanding in each other's stories. The dining room glowed with warm light from the chandelier above, casting a gentle shimmer across the carefully arranged place settings. It was meant to be a simple family dinner, as simple as anything could be with cameras discreetly positioned in every corner of the room. Zane sat at the head of the table, his suit jacket draped over the back of his chair, trying to appear relaxed despite the constant surveillance. Lena bustled around the kitchen, putting final touches on the meal she'd prepared. Her son, Troy, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with his mother's warm smile, bounced excitedly in his chair next to Zane. "Can I help serve, Mummy?" Troy called out, his feet swinging beneath the table. "Stay seated, sweetie," Lena replied, carrying in a steaming dish of mac and cheese, Troy's favorite. "Everything's almost ready." Zane found himself smiling at the boy's enthusiasm. Over the past few weeks, he'd grown fond of Troy's presence in the house. The child's innocent energy cut through the artifice of their manufactured reality show marriage. "Look what I drew at school today," Troy exclaimed, pulling a crumpled paper from his pocket and smoothing it out on the table. "That's you, and Mommy, and me at the park." Zane leaned over to examine the crayon drawing. 3 stick figures stood holding hands, one tall with a tie, one with long curly hair, and a smaller figure between them. Something tugged at his heart as he studied the simple family portrait. "It's wonderful, Troy," he said sincerely. "You're quite the artist." Lena set down the last dish and took her seat, her eyes soft as she watched their interaction. The cameras whirred quietly, documenting every moment. "Time to eat," she announced, reaching to serve Troy's plate first. The meal progressed pleasantly, with Troy chattering about his day at school, Zane asking questions about his favorite subjects, and Lena adding gentle reminders about using his napkin. It felt natural, comfortable, almost too real. "Can you pass the bread, Daddy?" Troy asked suddenly, looking expectantly at Zane. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Zane's fork clattered against his plate. Lena's sharp intake of breath was audible in the sudden silence. Troy, oblivious to the impact of his words, continued to wait patiently for the breadbasket. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every nuance of the moment. Zane's widened eyes, the color draining from Lena's face, Troy's innocent expectation. "Here you go, buddy," Zane managed, passing the basket with slightly trembling hands. His mind raced. When had this happened? How long had Troy been thinking of him this way? Lena jumped in quickly, her voice overly bright. "Troy, honey, remember what we talked about? Mr. Zane is—" "But he acts like a daddy," Troy interrupted, his lower lip starting to quiver. "He plays with me and helps me with homework and tucks me in sometimes. That's what daddies do." Zane pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Excuse me," he muttered, walking swiftly from the room. He needed air, needed space to think. Later that night, after Troy was asleep, Zane found Lena in the garden. The cameras had finally stopped rolling for the day, giving them a rare moment of privacy. "When were you going to tell me?" he asked, his voice tight with emotion. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller somehow in the moonlight. "I didn't know he felt that way. I mean, I noticed he was getting attached, but I never expected—" "This isn't fair, Lena," Zane interrupted. "To him or to me. This was supposed to be a show, an arrangement. But now there's a child involved, a child who thinks I'm his father." "You think I planned this?" Lena's voice cracked. "You think I wanted my son to get emotionally invested in something that's supposed to be temporary? Do you know how terrified I am that he's going to get his heart broken?" Zane ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Why didn't you stop it sooner? Set boundaries?" "Because watching you with him—" Lena paused, collecting herself. "You're so good with him, Zane. The way you listen to his stories, help him with his homework, make him feel important. His real father has never shown him that kind of attention." The weight of her words settled between them. Zane thought about all the moments he'd shared with Troy, teaching him to tie his shoes, reading bedtime stories, celebrating when he got a gold star on his math test. When had it stopped being an act for the cameras? "I didn't expect this either," Lena continued softly. "I thought I could keep it professional, keep my heart guarded. But seeing you with Troy, seeing how natural it feels when we're all together, it's made me question everything about this show." Zane sank onto a garden bench, the cool night air clearing his head slightly. "What are we doing here, Lena? Really?" "I don't know anymore," she admitted, sitting beside him. "All I know is that my son, who has never had a consistent father figure in his life, has somehow found one in you. And I'm terrified of what happens when this show ends." The crickets chirped in the darkness, filling the silence between them. Zane thought about Troy's drawing, the simple happiness captured in those crayon lines. He thought about the way the boy's face lit up when he walked into a room, the trust in his eyes when he asked for help with his homework. "I never meant to betray your trust," Lena said quietly. "I should have talked to you when I first noticed Troy getting attached, but I was afraid of acknowledging that this might be becoming more than just a show." Zane turned to look at her, really look at her. In the moonlight, he could see the worry lines around her eyes, the vulnerability she usually kept hidden from the cameras. "What do we do now?" he asked. "I don't know," Lena answered honestly. "But whatever happens, Troy has to come first. I won't let him be collateral damage in this, whatever this is becoming." They sat in silence, both acutely aware that tomorrow the cameras would return, expecting them to play their roles in this carefully orchestrated reality show. But tonight, they were just two people grappling with emotions that had grown far beyond their control, and a little boy's innocent words that had shattered their carefully maintained illusions. The garden's shadows lengthened around them as they sat, neither ready to move, neither sure of what the next day would bring. The simple word "Daddy" echoed in both their minds, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful truths come from the most innocent hearts. The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as Zane scrolled through his phone, his coffee growing cold beside him. His jaw tightened with each new notification. The comments had become increasingly vicious overnight. "You're betraying your own kind," read one message. "What would your father think?" demanded another. "She's just using you for the money and fame," claimed a third. Lena entered the kitchen, Troy's small hand in hers. The boy's presence made Zane quickly lock his phone screen, but not before Lena caught the troubled look in his eyes. "More hate mail?" she asked softly, helping Troy into his chair for breakfast. "It's nothing," Zane muttered, but the strain in his voice betrayed him. The show's producers had warned them about potential backlash, but neither had anticipated the intensity of the public's reaction. What had started as entertainment news coverage had morphed into something uglier, more personal. Zane's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from his father's assistant. "Emergency board meeting. Attendance mandatory." He knew what that meant. The company's stock had dropped 15% since the show began airing. His father, always conscious of appearances, would be furious. "I have to go," he said, standing abruptly. Troy looked up from his cereal, disappointment clear on his face. "But you promised to help me with my science project today," the boy said quietly. Zane's heart clenched. "I'm sorry, buddy. Something came up at work. We'll do it tomorrow, okay?" As he grabbed his jacket, Lena followed him to the door. The cameras weren't rolling yet. They had another hour before the crew arrived. "Your family?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "The board wants answers. Our stock is falling, Lena. My father's livid." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of stress. "This isn't just about the show anymore. People are calling for boycotts of our products." Lena leaned against the doorframe, her own exhaustion evident. Her phone had been blowing up too, but for different reasons. Her social media following had tripled since the show began, but the attention was double-edged. They're saying I'm exploiting Troy, she said quietly. That I'm using him to gain sympathy, to manipulate you. Her voice cracked slightly, as if I would ever use my own child. Zane reached for her hand instinctively, then caught himself. Even these private moments didn't feel truly private anymore. Someone was always watching, always ready to twist their actions into something sinister. I know you wouldn't, he assured her. But my family, they're not as understanding. Later that day, Lena sat in her home office, staring at her laptop screen. Her latest blog post about interracial relationships had gone viral, generating both support and vitriol. The comment section was a battlefield of opposing viewpoints. Her phone lit up with a text from her agent. Your numbers are through the roof. We've got speaking engagement offers coming in. This is your moment, Lena. Strike while the iron's hot. She glanced at the family photo on her desk, her and Troy at the park, taken long before the show. Things had been simpler then. Harder in some ways, yes, but simpler. The sound of the front door opening drew her attention. Zane was back, hours earlier than expected. She found him in the living room, his tie loosened, looking defeated. They want me to end it, he said without preamble. The board, my father. They're saying it's too much of a liability. They're threatening to remove me as CEO if I don't correct course immediately. Lena sank onto the couch beside him. What are you going to do? I don't know. He looked at her, really looked at her. This started as a show, as a statement we both wanted to make, but now it's real. She finished. Too real. The cameras would be rolling again soon. They'd have to put on their public faces, play their parts. But the lines between reality and performance had blurred beyond recognition. Troy asks about you when you're gone. Lena admitted. He doesn't understand why people are angry. He sees the comments sometimes, even though I try to shield him from it. Zane's phone buzzed again. Another message from his father. He ignored it. My sister called today, he said. She actually defended me to our father. Said she's never seen me happier than in the candid moments on the show. He laughed humorlessly. The irony is she's right. When I'm here, with you and Troy, just being ourselves, it feels right. But at what cost? Lena asked. Your company, your family's legacy. What about your career? He countered. This exposure could launch you to the next level. Your message is reaching millions. Lena stood, pacing the room. At what cost? She echoed his earlier words. My son is in the middle of this. Every time I post something, every time I speak up, they twist it. They say I'm using him, using you, using this whole situation for fame. The weight of public scrutiny pressed down on them both. Outside, they could hear the production crew arriving, setting up for another day of filming. Sometimes I wonder, Lena continued, her voice barely above a whisper, if we're just proving them right. Maybe we're both so focused on making our points, on fighting our separate battles, that we've lost sight of what's really at stake. Zane stood, moving to stand beside her at the window. They watched as the crew unloaded their equipment, preparing to document another day in their increasingly complicated lives. We're not acting anymore, are we? He asked softly. No, she replied. And that's what scares me the most. The doorbell rang, the signal that filming would begin in 5 minutes. They looked at each other, understanding passing between them. Whatever this had become, whatever they meant to each other now, they had decisions to make. But for now, they had roles to play, cameras to face, and a watching world waiting to judge their every move. The pressure was mounting from all sides, threatening to tear apart not just their arrangement, but the real relationships that had grown despite it. As they prepared to face another day under the microscope, both wondered silently how long they could continue walking this tightrope between public perception and private truth. The evening sun cast long shadows through the living room windows as Zane and Lena sat in uncomfortable silence. The camera crew had finally left for the day, leaving them alone with their thoughts and the weight of everything unsaid between them. Zane loosened his tie further, running a hand through his usually perfectly styled hair. "I can't keep pretending this isn't affecting me," he said quietly. "Every time I walk into the office, I feel the stares, the whispers. People I've worked with for years now look at me differently." Lena shifted on the couch, drawing her knees up to her chest. "I know what you mean. My followers keep asking if this is all just for show, if I'm selling out for fame." She paused, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Sometimes I wonder if they're right." "Are they?" Zane asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's what scares me," Lena admitted. "At first, everything was clear. This was about making a statement, about using this platform to speak up about things that matter. But now—" She trailed off, looking at him with uncertainty in her eyes. "Now the lines are blurred." Zane finished for her. He stood up, pacing the room with nervous energy. "My father called again today. He said, I'm throwing away everything our family has built over 3 generations. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss my position." Lena watched him move, noting how his shoulders carried the tension. "You could lose everything," she said softly. "The company, my family's respect, my reputation, everything I've worked for my entire life." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. "And the crazy thing is, I'm not sure I care as much as I should." The admission hung in the air between them. Lena felt her heart race, knowing she needed to be honest too. "I'm scared," she confessed. "I've always been independent. Single mum, self-made career, complete control over my life. But being here with you—" She swallowed hard. "I'm starting to want things I shouldn't want." "Like what?" Zane asked, his voice gentle. "Like this." She gestured to the space between them. "The quiet moments when the cameras are gone, the way you are with Troy, the feeling that maybe this could be—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "But I can't lose myself in this. My platform, my voice. It's not just about me. People count on me to speak up, to represent something bigger." Zane moved closer, sitting on the coffee table across from her. "Who says you have to choose? Why can't you have both?" "Because nothing about this is real," she said, but her voice wavered. "It's all staged, all for show. Even when it feels real, there's always that doubt." "Is it though?" Zane reached for her hand, then stopped himself. "When Troy called me, 'Daddy,' the other day, that wasn't staged. That was real. Too real." Lena's heart clenched. This was the moment she'd been dreading. "About that," she began, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I need to tell you something about Troy." Zane's expression shifted, concern crossing his features. "What is it?" "He's never had a father figure in his life," Lena explained, her words coming faster now. "His biological father left before he was born, and I've always been careful about who I let into his life. But with you," she took a deep breath, "you've been so good with him, so natural. He sees how you treat me, how you make time for him. In his mind, that's what a daddy does." "Lena." Zane's voice was thick with emotion. "I should have explained it to him better." She continued. "Should have set boundaries, made it clear this was temporary. But I didn't want to break his heart, and maybe I didn't want to admit to myself that this isn't real either." Tears welled in her eyes, and she brushed them away impatiently. "I'm not using him, Zane. I would never do that. But I've let this go too far, let him get too attached, let myself get too attached." Zane reached out again, this time taking her hand in his. I know you wouldn't use him. I've seen you with him, seen how you protect him. That's one of the things He stopped, collecting himself. One of the things I admire about you. We're in so deep. Lena whispered. Every day it gets harder to tell what's real and what's just for the cameras. My feelings, your feelings, Troy's attachment. It's all mixed up with this show, with our message, with everything we're trying to prove. Maybe that's because we're trying too hard to separate things that can't be separated. Zane suggested. The public Zane and the private Zane, the influencer Lena and the real Lena, maybe they're all just parts of who we are. Lena shook her head, pulling her hand away. But how do we know? How can we trust any of this when it started as a performance, when there's so much at stake? Because of moments like this, Zane said firmly. When the cameras are gone, when we're just talking, when it's real enough to be terrifying. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I'm scared too, Lena. Scared of losing everything I thought mattered, but I'm more scared of losing this, whatever this is becoming. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Lena felt exposed, vulnerable in a way no camera could capture. The truth about Troy was out there now, along with all their fears and doubts. They sat in silence, both aware that they were at a crossroads. The safe path would be to pull back, to maintain the professional distance the show required. But the other path, the scarier one, beckoned with the promise of something real, something worth the risk. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway broke the moment. Troy appeared in the doorway, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. Mame, I had a bad dream. Lena opened her arms and Troy ran to her, climbing into her lap. Without hesitation, he reached out and grabbed Zane's hand too, creating a physical connection between all three of them. The simple gesture said more than words could express. In that moment, the lines between real and fake, between performance and truth, seemed both more blurred and more clear than ever before. Zane ran his fingers through his hair, a gesture Lena had come to recognize as a sign of his internal struggle. The moonlight filtering through the living room windows cast long shadows across his face, making him look older, more tired than usual. I think we need some time apart, he said quietly, his words hanging heavy in the air between them. Not because I want to, but because we need to figure out what's real without all of this. He gestured vaguely at the cameras mounted in the corners of the room, their red lights blinking steadily like mechanical eyes. Lena felt her chest tighten. Even though Troy had gone back to bed, she could still feel the warmth where he had sat between them, bridging their worlds together. You mean leave the show? Not permanently, Zane clarified, leaning forward in his chair. Just a break, a week, maybe 2. No cameras, no social media, no pressure to perform, just time to think. To think about what? Lena's voice came out sharper than she intended. About how this affects your company, your family's reputation? To think about everything, he said softly. About Troy, about us, about what we're doing here. Don't you feel like we're losing ourselves in this whole production? Lena stood up and walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. The city lights twinkled below, reminding her of all the people watching, judging, waiting for them to fail. I'll agree to this on one condition, she said finally, turning back to face him. Complete honesty. No more holding back, no more carefully crafted responses. When we come back, we tell each other everything. Zane nodded slowly. Complete honesty, he agreed, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. The next morning, Lena packed a small suitcase while Troy sat on her bed, his lower lip trembling. But why can't we stay with Zane? He asked for the 3rd time. Remember how sometimes Mommy needs quiet time to think? Lena explained, folding a sweater with trembling hands. Well, sometimes grown-ups need that too. We're just taking a little break to think about things. Is it because I called him Daddy? Troy's voice was small, filled with worry that broke Lena's heart. She sat down beside him, pulling him close. No, baby. It's not because of anything you did. Sometimes grown-ups just need space to figure things out. As they drove to her sister's house, Lena couldn't help but check her phone. The news of their temporary separation had already leaked, and social media was buzzing with speculation. Her followers were divided, some praising her for taking time to evaluate her feelings, others accusing her of running away when things got too real. Over the next few days, Lena found herself constantly reaching for her phone to share something with Zane, only to remember their agreement. The silence between them felt both necessary and excruciating. She threw herself into spending time with Troy, but even their playground visits and bedtime stories were tinged with a sense of something missing. Ryan, Zane's best friend, stopped by on the fourth day, claiming he was in the neighborhood. He's a mess, you know, Ryan said, accepting the coffee Lena offered. I've never seen him like this. Like what? Lena asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Confused, distracted. He keeps talking about Troy, about you, about what's real and what isn't. Ryan studied her face. He's actually considering walking away from everything. The company, his family's expectations, all of it. Lena felt her hands shake as she set down her cup. That's exactly what I was afraid of. She admitted, I never wanted him to lose everything because of me. Maybe that's not your decision to make, Ryan suggested gently. Maybe he's finally figuring out what everything really means to him. That night, after putting Troy to bed, Lena sat down with her journal, something she hadn't done since starting the show. She began writing about her initial goals, exposing societal biases, building her platform, creating change. But as the words flowed, she found herself writing about other things, the way Zane's eyes crinkled when he really smiled, how naturally he helped Troy with his homework, the quiet moments when the cameras were off and they just existed together. Her success as an influencer was growing exponentially. Her followers had doubled, and she was receiving speaking engagement offers from major organizations. Everything she had wanted was within reach. But sitting there in the quiet of her sister's guest room, Lena realized that her definition of success had shifted without her noticing. She picked up her phone and typed out a message to Zane. I think I've been so focused on proving something to the world that I forgot to be honest with myself. Can we talk? His response came almost immediately. Tomorrow, no cameras, just us. As she set the phone down, Lena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Her platform, her message, her carefully constructed plan, they all seemed hollow compared to the real connections she'd formed. She thought about Troy's innocent acceptance of Zane, about the conversations that had nothing to do with social justice or public perception, about the moments when they forgot anyone was watching. Looking out the window at the quiet street below, Lena realized that while she had been fighting to change how the world saw them, she had missed how they had changed each other. Her success might have been growing, but at what cost? The metrics she had been measuring, followers, engagement, public impact, suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the weight of Troy's trust or the warmth in Zane's eyes when he looked at her across the dinner table. She opened her laptop and began typing out a post, then stopped. For the first time since starting her social media career, she didn't want to share this moment with her followers. Some realizations were too personal, too precious to be packaged into content. Some truths needed to be spoken first to the people who mattered most. Tomorrow she would meet with Zane. Tomorrow they would be honest about everything. But tonight she allowed herself to sit with the understanding that sometimes the biggest victories aren't the ones you can share with the world. Sometimes they're the quiet moments when you finally admit to yourself what really matters. The emptiness of Zane's penthouse office felt suffocating. 5 days had passed since their agreed separation, and each minute seemed to drag longer than the last. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker in the growing dusk, his reflection looking back at him with tired eyes. His phone buzzed again, another message from the board of directors expressing their concerns about the company's image. Zane let it go unanswered, just like the dozens before it. Instead, his thumb hovered over the photos on his phone, candid moments with Lena and Troy that the cameras hadn't captured. A breakfast where Troy had gotten syrup everywhere, Lena teaching him how to make her grandmother's banana bread, simple moments that had somehow become the most real parts of his life. Ryan's voice broke through his thoughts. "Your father's called 3 times today." "Let him call," Zane said, not turning around. "I'm done dancing to their tune." "You know." Ryan settled into one of the leather chairs. "I've known you for 20 years, and this is the first time I've seen you actually stand up to them." Zane finally turned from the window. "Because this is the first time it's mattered this much." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed his usually composed demeanor. "I keep trying to focus on work, on the company, on what everyone expects from me. But all I can think about is how Troy asked for help with his science project last week, or how Lena looks when she's really laughing, not the camera-ready smile she puts on for show. So what are you going to do about it?" The question hung in the air as Zane's gaze drifted to the upcoming network schedule on his desk. Tomorrow night was supposed to be a live broadcast, a special episode where they would discuss the impact of their experimental marriage on their lives. "I'm going to tell the truth," Zane said quietly. "All of it." Ryan leaned forward. "You sure about this? Your family?" "My family has controlled every aspect of my life for 42 years. They chose my schools, my career path, even tried to arrange my marriages. They've been so focused on preserving the Davenport legacy that they never asked what I wanted." The next evening, the studio lights felt hotter than usual. Lena sat across from him, beautiful and distant in an emerald green dress, their designated seats carefully arranged to create the perfect camera angles. The host, Sandra Mitchell, smiled her practiced smile as she introduced the segment. "Tonight, we're here with Zane Davenport and Lena Williams to discuss their groundbreaking experiment in modern marriage." Zane barely heard the introduction. His eyes were fixed on Lena, noting the tension in her shoulders, the careful way she held herself. When had he learned to read her so well? "Zane," Sandra turned to him, "your involvement in this show has caused quite a stir in business circles. How has this affected your position as CEO?" This was it, the moment to stick to the script or break free. Zane took a deep breath and looked directly into the camera. "You know, Sandra, I've spent my entire life trying to be the perfect son, the perfect CEO, the perfect public figure. I've let my family dictate every choice, always putting the Davenport name first." He turned to look at Lena, whose eyes had widened slightly. "But these past months have taught me something important. I've watched Lena face brutal criticism, racist attacks, and endless scrutiny with grace and purpose. I've seen her fight for what she believes in, not what others expect her to believe in." The studio had gone completely silent. Sandra Mitchell's professional smile had frozen in place. "The truth is," Zane continued, "this show was supposed to be about exposing biases in society. Instead, it exposed the biases in my own life. The way my family reacted to Lena wasn't just about protecting our image, it was about their own prejudices. The business associates who suddenly became concerned about my leadership weren't worried about the company. They were worried about what it meant to have a black woman associated with their precious social circle. Lena's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her expression unreadable. I'm done pretending. Done letting others dictate what's acceptable. Done watching Lena fight this battle alone while I hide behind corporate statements and careful PR. Zane's voice grew stronger. The reality is, this experiment stopped being an experiment for me weeks ago. The real Lena, not the one the cameras show, but the woman who makes terrible jokes when she's nervous, who stays up late helping her son with homework, who fights for what she believes in. That's the person I've grown to care about. Really care about. The studio erupted in whispers. Sandra Mitchell was frantically trying to regain control of the segment, but Zane pressed on. To everyone who's sent hate mail, who's threatened to pull their business, who's written those disgusting comments online, you've shown exactly why this conversation needs to happen. You've proven every point Lena has been trying to make about systemic racism and societal prejudice. When he finally fell silent, the studio was chaos. Sandra was attempting to cut to commercial. Producers were rushing around, and somewhere in the background, Zane could hear his phone exploding with notifications. But all he could focus on was Lena's face. She had stood up, her expression a complex mixture of emotions he couldn't quite read. Without a word, she turned and walked off the set, leaving Zane standing alone under the harsh studio lights. He found her in the green room, pacing back and forth. Lena, don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. Just don't. You can't just go out there and say things like that. Make declarations like that. This isn't how this was supposed to go. I meant every word. Did you? She finally turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Or is this just another performance? Another way to shock the audience? Because I can't handle it if this isn't real. There's too much at stake. My son, my work, everything I've built. Lena, please. But she was already moving past him, her heels clicking rapidly on the floor as she left, leaving Zane standing alone once again, the weight of his public confession settling around him like a heavy cloak. The morning after the explosive TV interview, Zane sat in his office, staring at the mounting pile of emails and missed calls. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since last night. Through the glass walls of his corner office, he could see his employees huddled in groups, throwing worried glances his way. Ryan Jacobs, his best friend and financial advisor, burst through the door without knocking. His usually composed demeanor was rattled, his tie slightly askew. Have you seen the numbers? Ryan dropped a thick folder on Zane's desk. 3 major investors pulled out this morning. Davidson Group is threatening to withdraw their entire portfolio, and the board is calling for an emergency meeting. Zane picked up the folder, his fingers tracing the edges. How bad? Bad enough that your father has been trying to reach you for the past 2 hours. Ryan loosened his tie further. Look, Zane, I know you care about Lena, but this isn't just about you anymore. We're talking about thousands of employees, their families, their livelihoods. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Zane's shoulders. He opened his laptop, scanning through the morning's stock reports. The numbers were bleeding red. What are my options? Ryan pulled up a chair. Honestly, you need to distance yourself from the show, from Lena, from all of it. Issue a public statement, say it was all for ratings. Make it clear that your personal life won't affect the company's stability. You mean lie? Zane's voice was flat. I mean survive. Ryan leaned forward. Your father's already drafted divorce papers. He says if you sign them today, he'll step in with emergency funding to stabilize the company. Zane's phone buzzed again. Another message from his father. The words blurred together. Family legacy, responsibility, damage control. Across town, Lena sat in a sleek conference room, facing Patricia Martinez, one of the most powerful media executives in the country. We want to take your platform global, Patricia was saying, her manicured nails tapping against her tablet. Your story has captured everyone's attention. The struggling single mother, the controversial marriage, the racial tension. It's perfect. We're offering you your own show, complete creative control, and a 7-figure deal. Lena's heart raced. This was everything she'd ever wanted. A chance to reach millions, to make real change. But something felt off. What's the catch? Patricia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. We need you to lean into the controversy. Play up the drama with Zane. The public loves a good scandal, and your numbers spike every time there's conflict between you two. You want me to exploit my relationship with Zane? Lena's voice wavered slightly. I want you to give the people what they want. Patricia slid a contract across the table. Look, honey, you started this to make a point about racism and privilege, right? Think about how many more people you could reach with our platform. All you have to do is keep the drama going. Maybe hint that Zane's family threatened you, or that you're afraid for your safety. Lena's stomach churned. But none of that would be true. Truth is relative in reality TV. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Your son's little daddy moment was ratings gold. We could work with that angle. Leave my son out of this. Lena's voice was sharp. Then work with me here. Your followers want to see you fight the system, stick it to the privileged elite. They don't want to see you falling for the enemy. Back at Davenport Enterprises, Zane sat through the most difficult board meeting of his life. Faces he'd known for years now looked at him with disappointment and barely concealed anger. The company has lost 30% of its value in 2 days, board member Thompson was saying. Our Asian partners are threatening to pull out of the merger. This publicity stunt has gone too far. It wasn't a stunt, Zane said quietly. Then that's even worse. Thompson's face was red. You mean to tell me you actually developed feelings for this social media personality? This woman who's clearly using you for exposure? Zane's hands clenched under the table. Choose your next words very carefully, James. Or what? You'll accuse me of racism too? Face reality, Zane. She's destroying everything your family built, everything your father sacrificed for. The mention of his father made Zane's jaw tighten. Charles Davenport had always been larger than life, a titan of industry who'd raised his son to put business before everything else. Now, sitting in his father's old office, Zane could almost hear his voice. The Davenport name means something. Son, it carries responsibility. His phone buzzed with a text from Lena. We need to talk. That evening, they met at a small coffee shop, far from their usual haunts. Lena looked tired, the usual sparkle in her eyes dimmed. How bad is it? She asked as soon as he sat down. The company's in trouble. Real trouble. Zane ran a hand through his hair. My father's offering to save it, but you have to end things with me. Lena's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she held her coffee cup. What about you? I heard Martinez Media made you an offer. A bitter smile crossed Lena's face. Yeah, they want me to become everything I've been fighting against. Use our relationship for ratings, play up the drama, maybe throw in some fake threats from your family. Would you do it? Would you sign those divorce papers? They sat in heavy silence, the weight of their decisions pressing down on them. Outside, a few paparazzi had spotted them, their cameras already flashing through the window. You know what's funny? Lena finally spoke. When this all started, I thought I knew exactly what I was fighting for. I wanted to expose prejudice, make people uncomfortable enough to change. But now it's not so simple. Zane finished. Nothing about this is simple anymore. Lena looked at him, really looked at him. Your company's tanking because of me. And your big break depends on you treating me like the enemy. Another flash from outside made them both flinch. Their private moment wasn't private at all. It never had been. Every decision, every emotion, every choice was being watched, judged, marketed. "What do we do?" Lena whispered, and for the first time since he'd known her, she sounded uncertain. Zane reached across the table, taking her hand. The cameras outside went crazy, but he didn't care anymore. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know that pretending none of this is real isn't the answer." Lena's phone buzzed. Patricia Martinez, probably wondering if she'd made a decision yet. Zane's phone lit up too, his father's name flashing on the screen. They sat there, hands clasped across the table, while their phones buzzed with the weight of expectations, ultimatums, and choices that would change everything. The coffee grew cold between them, and outside, the cameras kept flashing, capturing a moment of quiet crisis that would soon become tomorrow's headlines. Zane stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie for what felt like the 100th time. The green room at the National Broadcasting Network felt smaller than usual, or maybe it was just the weight of what he was about to do pressing in on him. "You don't have to do this," Ryan said from the couch, watching his friend with concern. "There are other ways to save the company. By throwing Lena under the bus? By pretending none of this matters?" Zane shook his head. "I'm done pretending." The door opened, and Lena walked in, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress. Her hair was pulled back, showing off the determined set of her jaw. "The producer says we're on in 10 minutes. "Are you sure about this?" Ryan asked, looking between them. "Once you go live, there's no taking it back." Lena's eyes met Zane's in the mirror. "I've spent my whole career fighting for authenticity. It's time I lived up to that." The studio lights were harsh and hot as they sat across from Diana Chen, one of the most respected journalists in the country. The red recording light blinked on, and Diana's professional smile appeared. "Good evening, America. Tonight we have with us Zane Davenport, CEO of Davenport Enterprises, and social media influencer Lena Williams. Their controversial marriage has dominated headlines for months, but tonight they're here to tell us what's really been happening behind the scenes." Zane could feel the sweat forming on his back. He'd done countless interviews before, but never like this. Never with his heart so exposed. "Zane," Diana began, "your company has lost millions in market value since this relationship became public. Your family has publicly distanced themselves. Why risk everything for what started as a reality TV show?" Zane leaned forward, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Because sometimes, Diana, life hands you something real in the most unexpected package. Yes, this started as a show, but what happened next? That wasn't scripted." "Could you elaborate on that?" "I went into this thinking I knew everything. I was going to boost ratings, maybe improve my public image. Instead, I met someone who challenged every assumption I had about life, about success, about what really matters." Diana turned to Lena. "And you, Lena. Your critics say you used this opportunity, and even your son, to advance your career." Lena's fingers tightened in her lap, but her voice remained calm. "I won't deny that I had an agenda when this started. I wanted to expose the prejudices that still exist in our society. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about proving a point." "What changed?" "Reality did." Lena smiled softly. "You can't fake the way my son lights up when Zane reads him bedtime stories. You can't script the conversations we've had at 3 a.m. about our fears and dreams. The cameras caught the surface, but the real story, that happened in the quiet moments." Zane found himself nodding. "My whole life, I've been taught that success means protecting the bottom line. Keep the shareholders happy, maintain the image. But what kind of success is it if you have to deny who you are and who you love?" The word love hung in the air, making Diana's eyebrows rise. "So you're saying this is more than just a business arrangement now?" "I'm saying..." Zane took a deep breath. That I'm done letting fear rule my decisions. Yes, the company is struggling. Yes, some investors are pulling out. But if the price of success is turning my back on what's right, on the people I care about, then maybe we need to redefine success. That's a bold statement from someone whose company is facing a crisis. Maybe that's exactly why it needs to be said. Zane sat straighter. For years, we've operated on the assumption that diversity and inclusion are nice buzzwords for annual reports. But when it actually costs something, when it challenges the status quo, suddenly everyone gets nervous. Lena reached over and took his hand, a gesture that wasn't planned but felt entirely natural. The same people who criticize us would never question a traditional couple. The attacks, the business losses, the family drama, it all comes down to one thing: fear of change. Diana leaned forward. Lena, you recently received an offer from Martinez Media for your own show. Will you be taking it? No. Lena's answer was firm. They wanted me to play a role. The angry activist, the gold digger, whatever would get ratings. But I didn't start this journey to become another stereotype. I did it to break them. Even if it means giving up a major career opportunity. Especially then. Lena smiled. My platform has always been about authentic representation. How can I preach authenticity while compromising my own truth? The interview continued, but something had shifted in the studio. The usual performance aspect had given way to something more real, more raw. When Diana opened the floor for viewer questions, they were surprised by the supportive messages flooding in. My daughter saw your story and finally had the courage to introduce us to her girlfriend, one viewer wrote. As a business owner, watching Zane stand up for his principles gives me hope. Another shared. By the time the red light blinked off, both Zane and Lena were emotionally drained, but somehow lighter. In the green room afterward, Ryan was waiting with news updates on his phone. The company's stock, he began. I don't want to know. Zane interrupted. Not tonight. Actually. Ryan smiled. It's up. Not much, but it's the first positive movement in weeks. Seems like honesty has some fans after all. Lena checked her own phone, which was buzzing with notifications. My followers are going crazy, but for once it's not about drama or ratings. They're sharing their own stories, their own struggles with being authentic in a world that wants them to conform. Zane wrapped an arm around her shoulders, feeling the tension of the past weeks finally starting to ease. So, no reality TV empire in your future? Please. Lena rolled her eyes. I think we've had enough reality TV for one lifetime. Besides, she looked up at him with a soft smile. Some things are better without cameras. The television studio's bright lights had finally dimmed, and the constant hum of cameras had fallen silent. In a quiet corner of the green room, Troy sat playing with his favorite toy cars, while Lena and Zane discussed the aftermath of their interview with Ryan. The 6-year-old seemed content in his own world, making soft vrooming noises as he rolled the red sports car across the coffee table. The social media response has been incredible, Ryan said, scrolling through his phone. People are really connecting with your story. Lena watched her son with a gentle smile. Sometimes the most powerful messages come when we stop trying so hard to send them. Troy looked up from his cars, his dark eyes bright with curiosity. Mummy, can we go home now? I want to show Zane my new dinosaur book. Sure, sweetheart. Just give us a few more minutes, okay? The boy nodded, but instead of returning to his cars, he walked over to where Zane sat. Without hesitation, he climbed onto the couch and settled himself next to him, the way he had done countless times over the past months. You know what? Troy said, looking up at Zane with complete innocence. Jimmy at school said his daddy left and got a new family. But you're my real daddy now, right? You won't leave like Jimmy's daddy did? The room fell silent. Ryan quietly excused himself, sensing the gravity of the moment. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she watched Zane's expression change from surprise to something deeper, more profound. Zane looked at Troy, then at Lena, his eyes filling with unexpected emotion. This wasn't a moment manufactured for television. This was raw, real, and completely unscripted. The truth of his feelings for both of them hit him with the force of a tidal wave. "Troy," he began carefully, his voice gentle. "I care about you and your mum very much." "I know," Troy said with the simple certainty of a child. "You make pancakes on Sundays and read me stories with all the funny voices. That's what real daddies do." Lena moved to intervene, but Zane caught her eye, silently asking her to wait. He shifted on the couch to face Troy properly. "You're right about something very important," Zane said. "Real family isn't just about who's related by blood. It's about who chooses to stay, to love, to show up every day." Troy beamed, satisfied with this answer, and returned to his cars. But something had fundamentally shifted in the room. Zane stood up, his decision already crystallizing in his mind. "Lena, could we talk? Privately?" They stepped into the adjacent office, leaving the door cracked so they could keep an eye on Troy. The setting sun painted the room in warm oranges and soft purples, creating an intimate atmosphere that felt worlds away from the harsh studio lights they'd been under earlier. "I'm sorry about Troy's comment," Lena began. "He's just a child and—" "Don't apologize," Zane interrupted softly. "He just helped me realize something I've been trying to figure out for weeks." Zane took her hands in his touch gentle but sure. "When we started this, it was all about ratings and messaging, but somewhere along the way it became real. The morning coffees, the family dinners, helping Troy with his homework, those moments weren't for the cameras. They were us, just us." Lena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Zane." He lowered himself to one knee, still holding her hands. "I'm not doing this for the show. In fact, I don't want this to have anything to do with the show. Lena Williams, I love you. I love your son. I love the family we've become when no one was watching. Will you marry me? For real this time?" Lena's breath hitched. "The media will have a field day with this. Your business—" "I don't care about any of that anymore. We can move somewhere quiet, start fresh. No cameras, no public scrutiny. Just us, building a life together on our terms." "You'd give up everything. Your life in the city, your company?" "I'm not giving up everything," Zane said firmly. "I'm choosing what matters most. The company can run from anywhere, and I've learned there are more important things than being in the spotlight." Lena studied his face, seeing nothing but sincerity in his eyes. "On one condition," she said finally. "Name it. We do this our way. No media announcement, no big ceremony, just us, Troy, and maybe Ryan as a witness. Something real, something private." "Nothing would make me happier," Zane agreed, standing up and pulling her into an embrace. Their moment was interrupted by a small voice from the doorway. "Are you going to be my real daddy now?" Troy asked, clutching his toy car. Zane looked at Lena, who nodded with tears in her eyes. He knelt down to Troy's level. "If that's okay with you, buddy, I'd like that very much." Troy launched himself into Zane's arms, nearly knocking him over. "Can we still have pancakes on Sundays?" Lena laughed, wiping away happy tears. "We can have pancakes any day you want, baby." As they gathered their things to leave the studio, Ryan returned, taking in their emotional faces and joined hands. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," Zane replied. "How do you feel about being my best man? Small ceremony, just the basics." Ryan's face broke into a knowing grin. "About time you figured it out, and yes, I'd be honored." They left the studio together, stepping out into the evening air. No cameras followed them, no reporters waited outside. For the first time since this journey began, they were just a family, walking hand in hand toward their future. Troy skipped ahead, still clutching his toy car, while Lena and Zane followed at a slower pace. "You're sure about this?" Lena asked one last time. "Walking away from everything?" Zane squeezed her hand. "I'm not walking away from anything. I'm walking toward everything that matters." The morning light streamed through the windows of Zane's family estate as he sat across from his father in the mahogany-lined study. The tension that had filled these rooms for months was finally beginning to ease. "I have to admit," his father said, setting down his coffee cup, "I was wrong about Lena. The way she's handled herself through all this, with grace and dignity, it's been impressive." Zane felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "That means a lot, Dad, really. Your mother wants to have you both over for dinner next weekend, with Troy, of course." His father's eyes softened at the mention of his soon-to-be grandson. "She's already planning to convert the old playroom." Meanwhile, across town, Lena sat in her home office, reviewing the analytics of her latest social media posts. Her follower count had doubled since the show, but something felt different now. She clicked through her content calendar and began deleting scheduled posts that felt too performative, too focused on creating controversy for clicks. Her phone buzzed with a message from her agent. "Major network wants you for a reality show spin-off. 7 figures. Interested?" Lena typed back without hesitation. "No, thank you. Taking a different direction." She smiled, feeling lighter as she opened a new document and began outlining content ideas that aligned with her true passion, creating genuine conversations about race, relationships, and family in modern America. No manufactured drama, just honest stories and real experiences. At Zane's company headquarters, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The stock price was climbing steadily, and investors who had pulled out were quietly making their way back. Ryan, who had stood by Zane through it all, knocked on his office door with good news. "The Thompson Group is back in," he announced. "They said your handling of the whole situation showed, and I quote, remarkable leadership and integrity." Zane leaned back in his chair, relief evident on his face. "You know what's funny? 6 months ago, this would have been the most important news of my day. Now it's just nice to hear." "Marriage has changed you," Ryan teased, but his eyes were warm with approval. Later that evening, Zane arrived home to find Lena and Troy in the kitchen, flour dusting their clothes as they attempted to make cookies. The sight made his heart swell. "Daddy!" Troy called out, running to hug him with powdery hands that left white prints on Zane's suit. He didn't mind one bit. "I turned down the network deal," Lena said as she wiped her hands on a kitchen towel. "And I've been thinking about restructuring my whole platform." Zane pulled her close, careful not to get too much flour on his clothes. "Tell me about it." "I want to focus on real stories, meaningful content. Maybe start a podcast about families like ours, create a space for honest conversations about interracial relationships and blended families." Her eyes lit up as she spoke. "Less clickbait, more substance." "That sounds perfect," Zane said, kissing her forehead. "And the best part is, you can do it all on your own terms." Troy tugged at their clothes. "Can we finish the cookies now?" They laughed, and Zane rolled up his sleeves. "Show me what to do, buddy." As they worked together in the kitchen, Lena shared more about her plans. She wanted to create content that would help other families navigate the challenges they'd faced, to turn their experience into something positive that could help others. "I thought I needed millions of followers to make a difference," she admitted. "But now I realize it's not about the numbers, it's about the impact." The timer dinged, and Troy bounced excitedly as they pulled perfectly golden cookies from the oven. It was a simple moment, but it represented everything they'd fought for. The freedom to be themselves, to love each other, to build something real away from the spotlight's glare. Later, after Troy was in bed, Zane and Lena sat on their back porch, watching the stars emerge in the evening sky. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, exactly what they'd needed after months of chaos. "Dad wants us over for dinner next weekend," Zane said. "Mom's already planning to renovate the playroom for Troy." Lena squeezed his hand. "Your family really has come around, haven't they? They just needed time to see what I saw, that this is real, that we're stronger together." They sat in comfortable silence, letting the evening wrap around them like a warm blanket. The media storm had calmed, their careers were finding new direction, and most importantly, they had found their balance, a way to stay true to their values while putting their family first. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Dr. Martinez's office as Lena and Zane sat side by side on the comfortable leather couch. This was their 8th therapy session, and both could feel the difference these meetings had made in their relationship. "Let's talk about how you've been handling the media attention lately," Dr. Martinez suggested, her kind eyes moving between them. Lena shifted in her seat, her hand finding Zane's. "It's gotten easier. We've learned to set boundaries, haven't we?" Zane nodded, squeezing her hand. "We turn off our phones during family dinner now, and we've made Sunday completely media-free, just us and Troy doing normal family things." "That's excellent progress." Dr. Martinez smiled. "How about the communication exercises we discussed last week?" "We've been doing the daily check-ins," Lena explained. 10 minutes each morning, just talking about what's on our minds. It helps prevent things from building up." After their session, they walked hand in hand through the park, something that had become their post-therapy ritual. The fresh air helped them process their discussions. "I'm speaking at the Equal Rights Conference next month," Lena said, watching a group of children play nearby. "They want me to talk about our experience, how we've challenged stereotypes about interracial marriages." Zane's face lit up with pride. "That's wonderful. Would you like me to be there?" "Actually, they've invited you to speak too, about using privilege and position to advocate for change." He pulled her closer as they walked. "I'd be honored. You know, before meeting you, I never really understood how I could use my platform for something meaningful. Now it feels like the most natural thing in the world." They had found their rhythm in public life too. Zane had started a diversity initiative in his company, making sure opportunities were available to people from all backgrounds. Lena continued her advocacy work, but now with a focus on creating lasting change rather than just generating buzz. At home, they practiced what they preached. They had honest conversations with Troy about race, identity, and family. They celebrated both their cultures, creating new traditions that honored both their backgrounds. Through therapy, they'd learned to face their fears together. Lena's fear of losing her independence, Zane's worry about failing his family. They discovered that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the foundation of their strength as a couple. The evening breeze rustled through the backyard garden as Lena and Zane sat on their patio swing, watching Troy chase fireflies in the growing dusk. The peaceful moment felt right for the conversation they'd both been thinking about. "I've been thinking," Zane began, his arm draped comfortably around Lena's shoulders. "Maybe it's time we talked about expanding our family." Lena turned to look at him, her eyes soft in the fading light. "Really? You want to have more children?" "I do. Watching you with Troy, seeing how amazing you are as a mother. I want that experience with you. Plus, Troy would make an incredible big brother." Troy's laughter echoed across the yard as he successfully caught a firefly in his cupped hands. "Mommy, Zane, look, I got one." "That's great, honey. Remember to let it go," Lena called out, then turned back to Zane. I've actually been thinking about something too. All this media attention, the constant spotlight. Maybe we need a change. I was thinking the same thing, Zane said, leaning forward. What if we moved somewhere quieter? Not too far, but away from the city's chaos. Somewhere Troy could have a real yard, where we could have more privacy. You'd do that? Leave the city? Lena asked, surprised. The company can run from anywhere. And your advocacy work? You've proven you don't need to be in the spotlight to make a difference. He took her hand. Plus, I think it's time we planned our wedding. A real one, just for us and our loved ones. No cameras, no media circus. Tears welled up in Lena's eyes. That sounds perfect. A fresh start, on our own terms. Troy bounded up to them, his eyes bright with excitement. Can I help plan the wedding? Can I be the ring bearer? Lena pulled him into a hug. Of course you can, baby. You'll be the most important part of it. We could look for houses this weekend. Zane suggested. Start fresh. Build our future together. Our future, Lena repeated, smiling. The word held such promise now, so different from when they'd first met on that reality show set. This was real. Their love, their family, their shared dreams for tomorrow. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the park's winding path as Zane, Lena, and Troy walked together, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. The familiar click of camera shutters had finally faded into silence, replaced by the gentle rustling of trees and Troy's cheerful humming. Look, Mommy, a squirrel. Troy pointed excitedly, tugging at Lena's hand. His innocent joy brought smiles to both adults' faces. Lena squeezed Zane's hand, feeling the warmth of contentment spread through her chest. It's so peaceful here, she whispered, just being us. No scripts, no cameras, no expectations. Zane agreed, his voice soft with appreciation. The pressure that had once weighed heavily on his shoulders had lifted, replaced by the simple pleasure of being with his family. Troy ran ahead a few steps, then spun around to face them. Can we get ice cream? He asked, his eyes bright with hope. Of course we can, buddy, Zane replied, watching as Troy's face lit up with joy. The pure, uncomplicated love of a child had taught him more about what really mattered than all his years in business ever had. Lena stopped walking, turning to face Zane. The setting sun painted everything in warm, golden light, making the moment feel magical. You know, she said, I never thought I'd be thankful for that reality show, but look at us now. Zane pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, while Troy continued his happy dance nearby. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, he murmured, as they stood there, embracing in the fading daylight. The world around them seemed to fade away. The controversial show that had brought them together, the media circus, the public scrutiny, none of it mattered anymore. They had found something real amidst all the pretense, something worth fighting for. Troy ran back to them, throwing his arms around both their legs in a group hug. Together, they stood there, a family united, no longer concerned with what anyone else thought or said about them. They had each other, and that was enough. The path ahead stretched out before them, leading away from the spotlight and toward their future together. Hand in hand, with Troy skipping between them, they walked forward into their new life, leaving behind the cameras and controversies that had once defined their relationship. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.